Hi, everybody. This is Patricia Coughlin speaking to you from cold, rainy Stockholm, Sweden. I am here on holiday and visiting with friends, but plans were rained out today. So I've been reading a lot on this break, and one of the books I'm reading, which is just spectacular, is called Stolen Focus by Johan Hari. And he's delving into the research on why we all seem to be so distracted and can't focus. And this is really not an individual issue or problem, he's saying. It's the way our entire society is constructed at this point, and in particular, the way we are taking in information. And I think this relates to a topic I've been talking a lot about lately, which is the need to understand and tolerate complexity and uncertainty in psychotherapy as a therapist. And I've been disturbed, to find that so many therapists and even teachers of therapists are trying to make things really simple and formulaic. And they're even borrowing terms from computer science, like we need to multitask. That's from from computer science. And algorithms, like you can use an algorithm to assess and intervene with a human being, right? And this is simply not accurate, and in my mind really contributes to this enormous problem that we're having. So if we combine these two, right, how are we functioning day to day? How are we taking in information? And is that helping us or hurting us, both personally, but also professionally, to understand the depth and complexity of other human beings? So there are just two factors I want to talk about today, although they are both related to the issue of reading. So many younger folks, it seems to me, like to read things online. They're reading blog posts and Facebook and even books on a device. So there's been research done at Stavanger University in Norway. The exact same text read online on some sort of device and read on paper, a good old-fashioned book. And they divided people into two categories. They all read the same thing. And then they were asked questions about what they had read. And the differences were very significant. People who read on devices did not absorb, understand, or retain the material nearly at the same level as those who read it on paper. So this is very important. If you're wanting to learn and you're wanting to retain that information, hold it in your head somewhere so that you can use it and apply it. You're much better off reading books, real books, on paper. The other thing, which is not just about reading textbooks or nonfiction, just has to do with the act of reading novels, right? Not just looking at Twitter feeds or even, YouTube videos or even a movie. Reading a book, reading a novel, again, is a very complex activity. You need to focus and concentrate. You need to immerse yourself in the view of the other, of the author. It's not your mind, it's not your imagination, it's somebody else's. And so they were looking at people who read novels, and I'm trying to think how they did this actual experiment, but it really had to do with empathy. Because if you think about it, when you're reading a novel, as opposed to watching a film, You're reading it, you're trying to understand it, and you're creating visual pictures in your mind. You have pictures of those characters. You're imagining the situation and the location. This is a very complex activity. And I know for myself, many times if I've read a book and then I watch the movie, I'm like, no, 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 that guy shouldn't look that way. That's not the way I saw him in my mind. So we're really having to put ourselves in other people's minds and places and feel with them and for them. And so in this study on, again, what was the effect of actually reading novels with that, it increased empathy enormously. So think about that. That makes sense, right? You're having to empathize with the characters. And that translated to being more empathic, to being able to think about, what's this other person thinking? What was that like for them? Not just what's my own view, and not just whether I like it or not. All these very short bursts of information and opinion are really counter to the kind of thinking we need to do as clinicians. And another one of the research findings, which I found so alarming, was that 57% of all American adults reported not having read a single book in the previous year. So that probably includes some of you. So it really is use it or lose it. If you're not using these parts of your brain, you're not developing this capacity for empathy, for understanding complexity, and your mind and your perception is going to be very narrow and narcissistic. I mean, right? It's going to be self-focused, more self-referential. So I can't urge you enough to read good literature. I mean, this goes back to Freud. He said being a physician and going through medical school is like counterindicated when it comes to being a good psychoanalyst. He said you really need to read literature and understand history and archaeology and things like this. So make sure you're reading good novels, and I have several to recommend that I have read recently and really enjoyed. One is called Lucky Boy. Fabulous story about a young Mexican woman who came to the U.S. illegally, had a baby. I'm not going to tell you more. Then there was, such a beautiful, beautiful novel written just gorgeously called Migrations, which is, on the one hand, about climate change and what's happening at that level. But then, of course, there's this wonderful parallel to the inside and the outside, the migrations that this main character is making and why she can't seem to stay put and has to keep moving location, and the relationship between the inner environment and landscape and what's happening on the bigger scale. And then finally, the other one, again, extremely complex and just so powerful, is called A Constellation of Vital Phenomenon. And this novel takes place over the span of a couple of days, and yet it's so rich and detailed and flashbacks and very complex. And it is about Chechnya and when Russia, the war, 2 wars actually with Chechnya, which of course is very pertinent right now given what Russia's doing in Ukraine. So I urge you to read often, read widely, and see what a difference it makes in your life, personally and also professionally. And if you have some great novels to recommend, please do so. Bye-bye.